What's going on, fight fans? This is Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Rob Jarrell, and this is the preview to Saturday's big super middleweight championship matchup. In the third fight in the trilogy, featuring the champion, Saul Canelo Alvarez, taking on perpetual Canelo Alvarez challenger, Gennady Triple G Golovkin. Golovkin is looking to get his win back, bring everything in this rivalry to 1-1-1 and win the super middleweight WBC, WBA, IBF, WBO, and lineal ring title, and maybe bring us a fourth fight if he wins. So let's get into it. So after having watching the previous two fights and a few of each of their other fights, this is going to be another closely contested fight. There are some people out there saying that Triple G is going to get stopped. That's not out of the realm of possibilities, but a lot of guys have been able to put hands on Triple G and they haven't been able to stop him. And in that first fight, extremely close. A lot of people thought Triple G won in a majority draw. In the second fight, it was a majority decision that went, it was a split draw. And then it was a majority decision that went to Canelo Alvarez in the second fight. A lot of people said Canelo won that fight cleanly. He did not. That was another closely contested fight. Canelo has a punch style that is more showy. When he lands, it really looks like he lands and it gets your attention. But he banked a lot of early rounds. It was competitive, very competitive in the first few rounds. Canelo seemed to take over while Gennady was trying to get himself together, but they traded a lot of hard shots, and it had a very torrid pace. But in those championship rounds, you saw that Gennady settled himself and really started bringing the fight to Canelo. Canelo was moving forward while Golovkin was circling him in the ring, whereas in the last third or fourth of the fight, that's when Gennady started coming forward. And when he starts coming forward, it is the big drama show, and that's exactly what it was. So we can only hope that we get something as entertaining in this third fight going forward. And being that these guys are older, I think Gennady is 40 and Canelo is, 32? Now, let me look it up real quick. But I think he is 32. Yes, he's 32. So there's that 8-year difference, but keep in mind, Canelo, since their last fight during COVID, has been very active. He's had 8 fights in that time since 2018, since September 2018, whereas Triple G has only had 4 fights. We know he went from Abel Sanchez and went to Jonathan Banks out of Crump, and considering that Canelo has 61 fights to Gennady Golovkin's 44, we have to see where that wear and tear is going to be. Also, in that meantime, I think the competition has been much better on Canelo and he's been more active, so he hasn't had the time he needs to polish himself, or he takes time off so he has to get in shape. He's been pretty consistent, with his best wins being Sergey Kovalev, Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, and then taking on Rocky Fielding. And I think Danny Jacobs. So he's had a great run, including these fights, with his last fight being his second loss on his record to Dimitri Bivol, who is the same age but is much fresher and was at 175. Canelo, I would have to say, even though he beat Sergey Kovalev, his max that he should be fighting at is 168. By that time, Sergey Kovalev had been knocked out a couple of times, beaten a couple of times, so he was a little bit worse for wear. I don't even think he really takes great care of himself in between fights or when he has long layoffs. But when he got to Bivol, who was champion, fresher, fast, speedy for that division, and great skills, it just went to a unanimous decision, and that was a good fight as well. You can just tell that Canelo was up against it. Personally, I think that might have taken a little something out of him since those last fights with Golovkin. That is the most punishment he had actually taken. Triple G, on the other hand, getting used to a new trainer, moving from Abel Sanchez to Jonathan Banks, who is an amazing trainer, and then taking on, if I'm not mistaken, Camille Sergimata. I can't really remember his name or pronounce his name. Ryota Murata, which was a great fight for as long as it lasted. Murata did put hands on him. You could see that Triple G was really slowing down with the punishment that he was taking consistently. But I think he was more attuned and making it a war of attrition, the big drama show, and just straight up going in. And he eventually knocked out Murata in 7. Then he had an extremely tough fight versus Sergey Derevchenko, who is a slick southpaw who has given just about everyone he's fought hell. And I mean straight up hell. And because Gennady Golovkin has the skills and the power to take on a slick crafty southpaw with a long amateur and professional background, he didn't look at his best. But I think that was just him working some things out versus these fighters. So let's get into the fight. For Triple G, I don't think he's going to be able to keep up the pace of those first 2 fights. We know he's going to be there to hit. He likes to bring the pain. I think he's going to be more measured in his fight on when he steps on the gas, when he steps off the gas. I don't think he's going to circle as much because he's had greater effect moving forward. You can see when he stepped into Canelo's space, he wants to operate from the mid to the inside. I think he's really going to work that jab, and he did a really good job of jabbing, throwing an uppercut, and throwing a hook, or throwing and varying it up. There were a couple times where he baited Canelo with the jab and the uppercut, which caught Canelo, then he timed it, and then he turned the left uppercut into a left hook. If he had followed up with the right hand, I think he really could have hurt Canelo, but Canelo being slick, he could turn with those punches and he gets a rhythm. But I think he did a really, really, really good job working off that jab. Canelo, on the other hand, has a faster jab, and he's much more willing to unleash the right hand. Also, Canelo does need to work the body. In the second fight, he didn't work the body as much, whereas Canelo worked it very well. I think Gennady's going to be open to that left hook. That means Triple G needs to bring the right. He also needs to, Triple G also needs to look out for the overhand right of Canelo. In the Murata fight, the straight right hand was there, but a looping right and a right cross landed very consistently. And because Canelo can avoid punches and counter really well, he's not afraid to pull the trigger. He's going to work from the outside to the mid-range because he's going to need space to really unload. And he can do a pull right counter. He can move. But in these 2 fights, or at least in the second fight, he was more apt to move forward and be right there. The one thing that Triple G has had problems with, especially with his opponents, are those who could stand their ground. I think we saw that bit of it in the Kell Brook fight. Of course, he's ended up stopping Kell Brook. Danny Jacobs gave him a lot of trouble by being there. Canelo is the same way. And Murata, as long as you can stand your ground and deliver punishment, you have a great chance. The problem is when you get in there too long and he starts timing you and starts landing. Because once he starts landing that left hook, which he's going to be working at left, he wants the left, and then he has a sneaky right that goes around the guard of his opponent, and it usually hurts. You can see the difference. Like, he would get hit and keep coming back, even if he was pushed back. Whereas he would land on Canelo, and Canelo was like, oh, I can throw back. But in those later rounds, like, wait a minute, let me back off a little bit, because this dude still has a lot of steam on his punches. Also, I think conditioning for Triple G is going to be important in protecting that body, because Murata, and Triple G was able, I'm sorry, Murata and Canelo were able to land a lot of body shots and take his legs away, or at least slow him down through the first and middle rounds of the fight. I don't know where he found his second win. Let's hope he can find it in his third fight. Canelo, on the other hand, stand your ground, but don't stand there too long, because at a certain point, as you move forward, he's going to start meeting you. And then, even though you will land, he lands super hard. And again, you don't want a war of attrition, especially if you're a good puncher or a great puncher like Canelo. Triple G still has a pole-like jab, a devastating left hook, a really good uppercut, and that looping right. And he's still a slab of granite, so he will not be deterred. The good thing is, he got kind of busted up in that fight in the second fight with Canelo. He left with a lot of damage to his right eye, especially the jab. Also, I think Canelo needs to measure himself a bit. He seemed to, in the Bivol fight, get tired. He said he got tired. I think in the Golovkin fight, he might have gotten a little bit more tired than he really wanted to admit. And we know Canelo has to measure himself through fights, because if he doesn't, he's going to labor in the latter half of the fight. And if he has to escape, get out the way, back up, whatever it is to keep Triple G off him that does not consist of returning fire, then he's just going to get walked down. Triple G is going to start cutting off the ring, and he's going to start going shot for shot. You don't want to be worn down by this guy, because it's eventually going to end. But because Canelo, in all fights, he lands the better punches, the showy punches, the punches that look like they mean something, and he gets those oohs and ahs from the crowd, his scoring, his work is going to look much better than Golovkin's, who is more like a thud. And I mean, it may not make this big gunshot sound, but you can see boom, 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 and it starts pushing it back eventually. The other thing for Canelo that worked for him and that worked for other fighters, left hook to the body, right uppercut. Because in this fight, in other fights, I've seen Triple G high guard, lean over his front foot where his elbows are out. So you can throw around those, and as you throw around them, you can come with the right hook. Not the right hook, the right uppercut. And I think if he can do that and pop Triple G's head up consistently and end it with the left hook and land the left hook, it's going to get the attention of the judges consistently. It's going to be there. And if you land the right hook, get them looking at the right hook, throw your own right cross or looping right in order to land. Because if he's here and he has to bring it up, that whole right side, you can slip it in. And if he's thinking that he wants to jab, you can time it and still throw the looping right, overhand right. Not so much the straight right, because I think that's something he can see coming. So that's all I got. I tried to give you all as much as I could. Who do we think gonna win? I think it's going to be close. I think Canelo's going to pull it out. Triple G is going to have to show us something completely different. He's going to have to land some really meaningful shots that gets the attention of the judges and not swing so wildly, because if he starts missing badly and Canelo's out the way, it's just going to look like ineffective aggression. He's got to make it effective. Cutting off the ring, not just circling him, but moving forward, cutting off the ring if Canelo escapes, and not throwing such wild, wide Canelo can see it punches. I think Canelo is going to edge this one out. If not, it's going to be another draw, another talk for the ages. And Triple G is probably the one that's going to say, I'm going to end my career on a win against this guy. And Canelo's like, no, you're not. I got to rematch Bivol. I got to get back. Tell us what you think. Will Triple G get his revenge, get a fourth fight? Or will Canelo put this trilogy and this series of fights behind him so he can move on, take on Bivol, and keep building his Hall of Fame resume, because there are plenty of challenges out there from 160 to 175, a lot of young guys, and he's going to be the old guy taking on those young guys. And he started very early, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be looking to retire by his mid-30s, at least by the time he's 38 or shoot, maybe 35 or 36. If you stayed this far, thank you. Tell us what you think. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, hit that bell icon so you can get the latest and greatest from myself and Hakeem. Whenever we bring you a preview technical toolbox, we got a couple of things coming. We just got to plan it out because it's a little difficult. We live about an hour apart and traffic's a bitch. And until next time, bite on.